Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to the History Squad. Now today we're on location at Hever Castle in the lovely county of Kent in the south of England. Now this was first built in 1383 by John de Cobham. He was a government official. In fact, he was a tax collector who had been unnerved by the peasants' revolt. He was in fear of the safety of himself and his family, so he needed a country retreat. So he built himself Hever Castle, a fortified manor house, a defensive position, complete with the moat. It's deep, it's wide, it flows away into the river. You have two towers at the front and a gatehouse going across. It's complete with crenellations, so he had license from the king to crenellate, make a defensive position. The big windows that you can see there, they're later additions. Medieval times, you can see he's got these quatrefoil arrow slits. Well, they're also gun ports. There's a strange little one at the bottom, and I don't know what it's for. If you were able to look down through medieval times, then along the side it would be a straight curtain wall, complete with all of the crenellation along the back and then up the other side. But what we can see now is where the Tudor fireplaces have been built into the wall, complete with those beautiful chimneys. And as you come across, you can see the drawbridge. You can see the portcullis as you walk around the front of the castle. Now this leads me into the first secret of Hever Castle. As you see, there's been lots of changes over the centuries here. You've had improvements, you've had renovation, neglect. But there's one window that I don't quite understand. That circular window on top there. What on earth is it for? Now, when you first look at it, could be it for a cannon. Could it be for light? Well, I'll tell you. It's a dovecote or a pigeon loft. They had lots of pigeons flying in and out of there. They had their nesting boxes inside, and when they wanted to collect the eggs for breakfast, they simply went up through a door on the inside of the tower, collected the eggs or a pigeon or two for supper. But when you see the size of pigeon eggs, if you want scrambled eggs, it's going to take more than a dozen to crack, don't you think? Right, we're going to take a walk inside, so let's go over what would have been the drawbridge. It still works, but nowadays it's powered by an electric motor, which I think is fantastic. So I'm going to take a little look. So we're inside the gatehouse, right, or the archway, the entrance to the castle. Little door there that will take you into your guard room. The front portcullis is just through the gates here. Centre portcullis. Up there, you've got murder holes. And it's not boiling oil you're going to drop on people, it's scalding hot water and it's boiling sand to get down inside the armour. Another set of murder holes, and then the final portcullis. And this is a good example because you can actually see how heavy, how sharp these things would have been. And of course you've got your inner doors and you have your day door, your wicket gate. So this castle has three portcullises. Your outer, your central one, your middle one, which has been removed. Then you have your inner one, and then you have your main doors. So this is a proper functioning gatehouse, murder holes, the whole business. And it is, you're in the medieval times. But if we step out, you're literally stepping out of the medieval into the Tudor. So here we are in the courtyard. And as you can see, it's a Tudor courtyard. And when it was first built, these buildings weren't here. It was curtain walls, battlement walls and towers all the way around. Then individual buildings were added until the Tudor times, when they built it into a proper manor house. On this side for the servants, apparently there was an entranceway here, but even that's been changed. On the other side for the actual inhabitants of the house, this is where they live. Kitchens, servants, this is the living part of the Tudor house. But what I love about this, 1900, this place pretty much derelict, purchased by William Waldorf Astor in 1903, and he renovates it, brings it back to life, and then he makes it his house, his home, a home for an English country gentleman. But in fact, he was an American. Just wow, isn't it? We've stepped back in time. You could almost expect Henry VIII himself to step out through the door. You know, this is quite amazing. Let's have a look inside. Let's leave this Tudor courtyard and take a peek. So here we are in the entrance hall. Now this was an addition to Hever Castle, commissioned by Anne of Cleves. Was it 1540, married to Henry VIII for just 6 months, and part of the divorce settlement. She has Hever Castle, plus a supply of wine. Other bills are paid. She had other houses as well. She was one of the 6 wives of Henry VIII that did really well. But eventually, when he dies and his son Edward comes on the throne, she loses the other houses, and this becomes her main residence. And it's this entrance hall, really, it's built for ladies of the time. They're great flowing dresses. They will fit down here. But when you look at it, I just love the craftsmanship. So we leave the Tudor entrance hall behind and we step into the library. This is William Waldorf Astor's library. You see, in 1900, the castle was pretty much derelict. And William purchased the castle in 1903, and his intention was to restore it as close as he could to the Tudor house that it used to be. But this is his personal library. And some of the bookcases here, so I understand, are copies of Samuel Pepys, the diarist's bookcases. He scoured the world for all of these different books, but there's no secrets in this room. However, if you go down through that door, there is one secret door which leads to a bathroom, and another secret door in the corner which leads up to the tower, which in turn leads to a dovecote. So if you, in the old Tudor times, wanted a pigeon pie, you didn't go outside and catch them, you simply went up the stairs. We can't show you in there because it's actually a secret. But of course, the most famous period of history for the house here at Hever Castle is the Boleyn family. Geoffrey Boleyn, 1462, became the sole owner of the property. I think he was in a syndicate with his brother at first. And it passes down eventually to Thomas and Elizabeth, who have their children, George, then you have Mary, and then of course you have Anne Boleyn. And this is where the story takes off, isn't it? Anne Boleyn, she becomes the second wife of Henry VIII. It should be a fairy tale. But of course, it is a tragedy that is so deep that I don't think even Shakespeare could have written one to equal it. Because of course, Anne Boleyn and her brother George end up being executed in one of the saddest parts of English history. And yet this is part of the magic that draws people in to Hever Castle, the home of Anne Boleyn. So we're going into the inner hall. Now, when I first saw this room, it blew my mind. It really did, and I'll show you why. First of all, you just look at the intricate work. Just these pillars alone, the carvings on them. To me, I love this kind of stuff. It just really does. Just the flower petals alone. You know, the patience, the craftsmanship in this. The problem is, though, this is just one little bit. When you step into the middle of this hall and you look around and your eyes open wide, the faces of cherubs, the intricate carving, the scroll work. And then when you look up at the gallery there, you know, this, to me, that is, just mind-blowing, how beautiful. And then an Elizabethan style ceiling with all the Tudor roses on it. Wow. And if you step back, you see, hanging on the wall there is a tapestry. Now, I learned from another house that a third of a nobleman's wealth hung on his walls in the old days, medieval times, so there you have it. And here, this is keep your food warm. Put some coals in the centre there, put your food in there, keeps it nice and warm. And as wonderful as this whole room is, you look at old Henry VIII there, the whole business, it's a recreation. This is somebody's idea of what the hall should have looked like. In reality, this is an old Tudor kitchen.
There were 2 enormous fireplaces here originally, and it would have been very hot, sweaty work for all those cooks who beavered away in here to feed their household. But in the 1880s, this wall was dangerously unstable, and it eventually came down, destroying those original fireplaces.
And it was recreated into the idea of a Tudor inner hall. And to me, it just blows my mind. It's just wonderful. And I'd just like to be able to sit in here, read a book, but actually it's not that comfortable. If you come through here, there's a better room to read a book. So we've come out of the hallway in all its splendour, but if you turn the clock back to the Tudor times, it was the kitchen. This was the servant part of the castle. But what the Astors wanted was a comfortable place to withdraw, to relax, to live your life, but still retaining that Tudor feel, that Tudor look. Now the ceiling, inspired by the ceilings at Hampton Court, but I've learned something about these. The way the craftsman actually made this was not by using straight edges and tools. He wanted it to look authentic. So it's all been done by line of sight, by using your eyes to create this ceiling. And then the panelling, oak, bog oak and Hollywood is actually what's been used. And this is taken from Hever Castle in Cumbria, and it's Elizabethan style. So even though this is a comfortable room to entertain, to sit, to relax, it is still retaining this idea that Hever Castle was a Tudor house. And this room has a little secret. I can't show it you because it's a secret. Not only that, there's some furniture blocking the way. But down in the bottom there, you can just see a vase on top of a little side table. And if you look at the panelling halfway up, you can see that there's a gap in it. That is one of the secret doors. It opens up to reveal a drinks cabinet, because to have your drinks on open display was a little bit vulgar. But these little passages, these little ways in the old days, they led to the towers, or of course to the old garderobe. People, let's face it, if you have to go, you want somewhere convenient to go. And this castle has got lots of conveniences. Now I just want to show you this fantastic portrait there. William Waldorf Astor, first Viscount Astor. Great portrait, but have a look at this cabinet. This is part of his family heirlooms. A sword carried by Colonel Astor during the American Civil War. Some watches there, some memorabilia, and a photograph of some of the soldiers. So from what I can gather, he was part of the New Yorkers. So he would have been a Union soldier. This was built in 1383. This is the original medieval Great Hall. But as you can see, it ain't medieval. This is the Tudor recreation. Well, first of all, let me explain the medieval. Get rid of this wooden screen. The parlour's behind there. Push that all the way back. So this was a much bigger Great Hall. Take the windows out. Get rid of that big fireplace. And you have a fire in a hearth in the centre of this room. The smoke will go all the way up, and the ceiling was open to the rafters. It's called a crown post ceiling. So this was all open to the rafters. The smoke finds its way up there. The Tudor times, the times of the Berlin, they changed the whole thing. The wooden screen is put across. So there's a parlour the other side. They don't want the smoky business here of a fire. So there is a fireplace and chimney, and two windows cut through the curtain walls, because don't forget, this started its life as a fortified manor house. So now it's not fortified because there are those lovely windows. There would have been a dais up here, a raised platform, so the noble family would sit above the guests, showing who they really were in status. And of course you have the most beautiful hunting scene on this tapestry. It covers virtually the whole of the wall, and then as you come round, you have this incredible minstrel's gallery. And you know, it does look like a film set. Wow, you can imagine the minstrels playing up there. But the fact is, that has been recreated. That is part of what the Astors did to recreate this Tudor hall. But the ceiling, which used to be open to all the rafters and all of that, they were removed. There's this incredible ceiling put on top here, but that supports the long gallery that was put in on the orders of Anne of Cleves so they could walk up and down in the inclement weather. And this fireplace, when you look at it and that coat of arms, wow, the craftsmanship in it, to me, it just literally blows my mind. The coat of arms there, the whole facade of it. But it's a recreation. It's put in by the Astors there, the grand fireplace. And it's not until you kind of move down a little bit that you're reminded that this is in fact a Tudor building. This is where, in modern days, we'd call it a cupboard, but this is where they would have stored their silverware ready for their functions. So one of the fascinating features in here is the lock on the back of the door. Is this the original, or is this one the original? You see, the story is that Henry VIII was so concerned about security when he was staying in other houses that he bought his own locks, and one of these has been left behind. And there is the keyhole, so you can lock the door. Isn't that just fantastic? Just one of the more amazing little secrets of Hever Castle. Then you could hire this hall. You could have your private dining experience, your wedding reception in here, and that would be, let's face it, a once in a lifetime experience. So we're in the staircase gallery. It's above the entrance hall, overlooks the wonderful courtyard. This is where they could promenade with their long dresses. There are benches that could actually seat a couple of girls with their lovely frocks. But what I love about this room is not just the architecture, the way it's been restored and done. Good Queen Bess in her later years, and that's painted on your wooden planks, which is mind-blowing. But what I love is the little bits of furniture in here. You've got a baby's chair, a child's chair. This is a Tudor chair. I think probably Elizabethan. Just look at it, and it lifts up so you can put stuff underneath, you can store it, or you could even put a potty there so the baby can have a poop. And we have a crib here. Now, these are wonderful pieces of furniture, but they were handed down, kept in the family. And of course, you have a newborn baby in there and you can rock it backwards and forwards. But when you look at the mortality rate amongst the infants, especially in the Tudor times, it was tragic. In fact, Henry VIII, his firstborn son, Henry, Duke of Cornwall, by Catherine of Aragon, lived for only a few weeks. Heartbreaking. Just imagine how different history would have been if that boy had have survived. How different England, even the history of the world, would have been. But something I read about these is, even though mortality rate was so high, people in history still loved their children. They still felt the pain. And there's another piece of child furniture just up here that I find fascinating. Now, my favourite piece of furniture in this lovely room, it isn't the incredible oak buffet. It's this simple piece of furniture here. It's a child's high chair. These figured great, you know, in the Tudor times, in the palaces and the houses. Can you imagine the little child sat there and being fed its pottage? You know, I once saw a picture of a child walker for the Elizabethan times, a little circle thing with wheels and a seat in the middle, and you could push your baby or your youngster up and down, which I think they're banned now because of health and safety. But this reflects they love their children. And here we have a high chair, a beautiful piece of personal, functional furniture. If you go back to the Tudor times, we think this was a bedroom. You've got all the oak ceiling, the panelling, the most incredible view over the gardens, nice fireplace. Interestingly, this is the front of an old carved chest. And I was put to task to tell the story, and I really had to dig. So here we have Adam and Eve being taken from a rib, and there's God. And then you have the temptation, the serpent with the apple and Adam and Eve. They are then cast out of the Garden of Eden with a flaming sword, and she is shamed. And here you have them as ordinary people, dressed in Tudor garb, as it so happens. and they have their two sons, Cain and Abel, and then you have the falling out, and I think description is the murder of one brother by the other. Now in the corner you have a little room. It's actually a chapel, and this is a Catholic chapel. In the time of Mary the First, of course, this would have been no problems at all. But then under Queen Elizabeth, England becoming a Protestant state, this could be dangerous if you were having Catholic Mass. So this would have all been hidden behind a secret panel. But of course nowadays, in our time of religious freedom in England, we have the chapel open so everybody can see. No problems at all. But the real treasures housed in Hever Castle are two beautifully illuminated prayer books that belong to Anne Boleyn. They're quite wonderful. Now they're known as the Book of Hours, which comes from the short services to the Virgin Mary that were read at fixed hours of the day. And at the bottom of this one is an inscription written by Anne Boleyn. It says, "Remember me when you do pray, that hope doth lead from day to day." And you can just about see that she signed it, and she's also signed her name in the other book. These are her pages. Apparently she took these with her when she was imprisoned in the Tower. So a genuine personal piece of history, the treasures of this house. So we're upstairs now in the Long Gallery, Anne of Cleves Long Gallery. It literally runs the back of the house from one side to the other. A room for entertaining guests, taking exercise if it's inclement weather. How dare they have inclement weather in Kent in England? This is a fantastic room, but when you look at the ceiling you go, wow, look at those Tudors. Well actually that's early 20th century, that's part of the restoration. Apparently the ceiling would have been plainer than this, but the panelling is all early Tudor from what I can tell, but they've got all of the portraits running through from the Wars of the Roses right the way through the Tudor dynasties, giving you a little bit of English history. And in the bottom corner you have a portrait of my hero, Richard III. Now people pick out different paintings here, different portraits to show which is their favourite, and apparently most people go for Anne Boleyn because of course this is her ancestral home, isn't it? She's down here in the middle. So this is the people's favourite portrait. This is Anne Boleyn herself. She's a pretty girl for sure, with her little neck as she described it before her own execution. But an interesting thing here, she's wearing the French hood, bit of a fashion thing there. And it was risque as well apparently in the Tudor times because it showed so much of your hair. But it's this Boleyn brooch or pendant that you have here. Now, we don't know if it actually existed. There's no proof that it ever existed. It may have been painted on afterwards. We simply do not know, but we do know one thing about Henry VIII. He was a canny beggar. If he divorced you, or in this case beheaded you, bless you, all of your jewellery was taken back and then handed over to the next wife. So it's quite possible that that beef for Boleyn was actually repurposed into some other kind of jewellery. The fact is, we simply do not know. And just checking, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, she doesn't appear to have 6 fingers. Well, that's borne out by the evidence they found in the Tower when they recovered her bones. There wasn't an extra finger, apparently. But my favourite is further down. We've got Thomas Wolsey here. It was through him that Henry VIII got Hampton Court. But just here, this tiny little portrait. Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury. He helped build the case for the annulment of Henry VIII's marriage to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. But under the reign of Henry's daughter Mary, he was put on trial and found guilty of heresy and burned to death at the stake in 1556. Mary hated Cranmer. She blamed him for his involvement in her mother's divorce. And of course, this gallery would not be complete without a portrait of old Henners himself. Here we have Henry VIII King of England. Not all his wives are present here in their portrait, but how does it go? Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. But we do have a portrait of someone rather special. We are in Anne of Cleves' Long Gallery, and here she is, just tucked around the corner, Anne of Cleves. And she is an important character in the history of Hever Castle. Some of the extensions and some of the changes she's made are still evident to this very day. How lovely.
Now just look at this beautiful bedchamber. It's widely believed that Henry VIII visited Hever Castle a couple of times when he was courting Anne Boleyn, but we don't know for sure if he actually slept in this room. But that notwithstanding, it's certainly one of the best rooms in their house. And look at this bed. We call them four-posters now, don't we? But back in the day, they were called full-tester beds. This one dates back to 1540. It's got a beautifully carved surround at the top, and these posts, they're just incredible. You know, you can get half-tester beds too. They just add half a canopy. They're incredibly heavy. Now the panelling around the walls is all Tudor except for this beautiful piece over the fireplace, which was put in when they restored the place.
But we're now going to go all the way down into the council chamber. We're going all the way back into the medieval times. So we're in the medieval part, the council chamber. It's over the gatehouse. This is the first part of this castle that's built. This is where the lord of the manor would have met his vassals, would have held meetings, that kind of thing. There may have even been a screen across this piece because there's a hidden little room round the corner. And if you look through the window here, you have a portcullis. This is one of the original portcullis, and so I'm informed it's the oldest working portcullis in the country. To me, that's wow. There it is. You lower it, it gives you a clear view of the front of the house, and you could shoot down, fire down if you had a gun here. But these chains and the counterweights are the originals too. Upstairs you would have had the winding mechanism, the capstan, to pull up the drawbridge, the portcullis. The drawbridge, of course, is outside, so I would presume the mechanism might be upstairs as well. But what fascinates me is what lies under this floor. There is the second portcullis under here somewhere. Also, there's a row of murder holes. So anybody trying to break their way in, you can have scalding hot water, boiling sand put down on them. And then over on the back here, you have the final portcullis, the third one. And you can't see it. So you can see it from the outside, but you can't find it on the inside. And I read that it used to come up and form a sill along here. So I asked, where is it? And we're lucky enough to open one of the secrets. Inside the cupboard, you can actually see the portcullis. It's raised and jammed in position so it won't fall down on any of the visitors coming in. And this is your hidden little room. You have an arrow slit protecting the stairway. You would have had a gun port, small arrow slit here, but this has been changed. And of course, the most important little room in the house, you have the garderobe. And as ever with these houses, you poop and it goes down into the moat. It must have been delightful, but I asked the question earlier on, where does the moat drain? The moat actually flows from a lake around the house and then off into a river, so it would not have been stagnant. So this, a private little room for that little private occasion. What we have here is a partially restored fireplace, partially original. But in the house, wherever you go, look for these tiles. These tiles are set in one on top of the other. This is so that the bricks don't crack. What they have in the council chamber is an entire collection of executioner's axe, torture implements and serving swords, executioner's swords. These ones are from Germany. And it kind of blows your mind how cruel people can be today and as you know what they were like in history. But I was asked by one of the guides here, what's my favourite thing in the castle? There's two bits. There's this one here, which is 18th century. It's a double wooden halter. You've got two ladies, neighbours, having a row, creating problems, having a fight. So what you do, you put one head in there, put their hands in there, then you put the other girl's head in there and their hands in there, and they're facing each other, and they will stay in there until their argument is resolved. But that's not my favourite piece. It's hanging on the wall just here. One of my favourite parts of English history, well, it's British history really, is the Civil War, 1642 to 1651. This is a mortuary hilt sword, a cavalry sword from that period. And I must be honest with you, it is a fine example. I've had a close look at that. And maybe the Book of Hours is the most impressive. But to me personally, this is a gutsy piece of English history. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little tour of Hever Castle there. If you did, like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, why not have a look at joining our Patreon community? The link is in the description. Now, before I leave this wonderful place, quick shout out to some of our Patreon members. We've got Aussie Dave, Chris Michael and Bob Tuscan. Hey guys, thanks a million. See you soon.